Hey, so what's up, Mike? What are we doing? What's going on?
Oh, nothing much. It's been like a while. What was it, like a week or two ago? Let's see, the 27th. I guess it was last week. Not too
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, last week.
Um, yeah, doing well. Uh, Trying to get caught up on stuff. The nature of my life. I think
Yeah.
probably others as well.
Yeah.
It looks like we're gonna maybe even get to persisting the database today. I don't know. We'll
I
see.
don't know. I keep saying that, and it doesn't happen. So I'm like, I'm not. That requires estimating and prediction, and I'm just gonna stop doing that. Uh, so should we look at Jira?
Sure, let's look at Jira.
All right. Let's switch over to that.
Jira.txt files
Yep.
for new viewers.
Yep.
So
This is
looks
our
like we left
Jira.
a breadcrumb at
Yes.
Jira 72.
Right. So,
Correct.
yeah. So we finished converting our exception that we were throwing for what was really a validation failure. And I have a pending article on basically result versus exception. And I've been sort of reading a bunch of, or reading and rereading a bunch of articles about guidance on exceptions in Java, especially checked exceptions. And it's just interesting how frameworks like Spring and so on basically made the decision we're not going to expose checked exceptions, but there's still exceptions. Um, but figuring out so the heuristic. I've also been thinking a lot about heuristics and mental models. Heuristic here for me is if it's sort of input from somewhere outside the system that's outside of our control, then that's really validation, and we probably want to not throw an exception and to use some kind of result class, which does require a little bit of work and to do and to build. Um, and But databases are different. Like if we fully control a database, I would not expect any validation problems. Like if I load an object, it should just work. And if it doesn't, that's actually an exception. If it's a shared database, then all bets are off, and then you've got other problems. So, hey, Sweetie, welcome. Anyway, so that's the heuristic, and hopefully I'll get a chance to expand on that in an article, and maybe a video, but certainly an article. But one of the things we've been doing, maybe load up one of our tests that asserts against the result class.
Was it this one?
That one's fine. So one of the things that we're doing is, of course, asserting on our result that if it's, in this case, it should be successful, and that there should be no failure messages. But if this fails, so one of the things that I've started doing more, mainly because I'm trying to get better error messages, is, for example, if that assertion on 62 fails, all you get is basically an assert error saying true is not false. It's like, great, why? Why did we expect that? Now you could look at the test and it's pretty obvious, but it's especially when you're getting multiple test failures, it's nice to be able to, yeah, and we did it in this case here. But one of the things about AssertJ, which is the assertion library we're using, is that we can write custom assertions. And a first step would be, well, we're constantly doing these assertions like on is success. And so one of the things we want to do in our test code, like we do in our regular code, is raise the level of abstraction. So probably the first step would be to so what we might want is something like assert that result is success, right? Where the is success is the actual assertion method. Rather than just checking a Boolean and seeing if it's true or not. And that will certainly help because somewhere we assert that is success is false, and that's just hard to read. Like I know for me, if you just search for like an is false, I'm sure we have an instance of that. Yeah. So that's a little hard to read, right? It's like assert that is success is false. Wait, what does that mean? Oh, it means failure. What we'd like is assert that result is failure. So these are the little things that we can do in our code, in our test code, to make it that much easier to read, as well as then easier to write. So should we start working on this then?
Yeah. So we're going to write a custom assert for result.
Yep.
So let's see, this is the custom assert that works for, are we customizing the assert that library, or how
Yeah,
does that
so we'll
actually
create a
work?
custom class, but we're gonna take some small steps
Steps.
towards that.
Yeah.
But eventually it'll be assert that song result, and then the other nice thing is we'll be able to collapse both of these separate asserts into something like assert that song result is failure and has failure messages, contains exactly, and so it'll basically be one nicer, fluent, more domain specific, or at least specific to the result domain,
Right.
and so that'll be nice. Yes, assert
Let's
that
see.
failed successfully.
Yeah.
Let's run our tests to make sure that we're in a good state before we do anything else.
Yeah. Let's do all, just
Yeah,
because
let's
we
do
haven't
all.
done that.
Yeah.
And I did notice a commented out disabled, which I thought was weird.
Yes, I saw that too.
I was like, how did we? That's
We
not
must
usually
have
our
commented
thing.
out and then forgot to delete it.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
And all the tests pass. Switching back to IO free. Let's delete that. And then do we need the comment on 52 as well? Does the
I
header
don't
row
think
have?
that makes sense anymore because
Yeah, because there's
it's
not 8
not 8.
columns. That's comments out of sync with code? That never
That
happens.
never happens. Yeah.
Now I'm like scanning. Is there any other like crunk junk lying around? Number of columns and header match.
I think we can delete all those. We either have tests or a pending test or we have jurors for that. So yeah.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right. Do you want to do a quick commit just to say removes unnecessary comments or something?
The from code was redundant, but the Office of Redundancy required me to type that.
That's a very ChatGPT thing, is to be very overly verbose.
Did you hear about this one trick this professor was using to catch his students using ChatGPT? I don't know if you've heard this.
I've heard of a bunch of tricks. Which one is
Oh, you
this
have.
one?
This one was embedding some absurd text in the question,
Right.
but making it white text on white background, so they won't see it. But if they copy and paste in the ChatGPT, it starts giving crazy stuff about bananas and applesauce on a question of related to, I don't know, political history or something.
Right. It's funny, that was the old way you used to what was called spam dexing, where you'd put white text on a white background with basically just, have hundreds of keywords on a page, so people wouldn't see it, but Google and the other search engines would see it, and then bump the priority of the page, like, oh, it's got this keyword a lot, because it's all, it's always the battle of it's basically cat and mouse. It's like, we'll do this, it's like, oh, we'll look out for that, and okay, then we'll change it to do this, and oh, we'll look out for that. Never ending battle.
Should we just use the first test in this one to?
Yeah, I think that's
or do you want one that has the as?
We could do one with an as, or we could do start with success is true.
Okay.
I don't have a. Yeah, like,
I mean, I guess simpler to start is probably better.
Yeah, this is sort of the baseline. Baseline one. So, Yeah, so let's start by extracting 56 and 57 into a static method.
What do we want to call it? Actually, extract to a static. Will we extract and then make it static, or do we need to do the pop-up version?
Well, actually, I don't think it matters. I just usually do it with static, but it won't matter. I think what do we want to say? So where we want to get to is where we have an assert that takes a result object. And this one would be is success. Do we want to just call it is success? Let's try that. I think it'll become more clear. Yeah, because I think that's fine. Yeah.
And should we replace all or just this?
Yeah, we should replace all.
What do you think? Pump it up to static and see if it shouldn't be different, but I'm not seeing any instance variables being used.
So I think so let's think a little bit about what our destination is. Our destination is we want an assert class that its constructor takes the result object. Yeah, so maybe let's sketch it out. So we want a constructor that takes the result object and then a method on it called is success. And so how do we get there from here? So
if we extract this to a class or move it to a class, it's still taking the result object. Is there a way to then move the parameter of is success to the parameter of the constructor?
Yeah, so I think
there's a manual hack.
Well, I think there's going to be a manual step, but then I think we can use another one. So if we create a result assert class with a constructor that takes result, then we can new it up in this method and push it out, and then we can move this method over.
So manually.
Yeah, so let's create a result assert class. Yeah.
And where would we put that? Clearing the test world.
So I'd put it sort of in the same package that result is in.
Right, because this is testing result,
yeah.
which must be.
Which
I'm not searching, so.
No, because you're looking in the test, and so it's not going to appear there.
Actually, I could just hover over this guy.
Yeah. So application. That makes sense. Yeah. Some questions in the chat. Sebash asks, how can I determine whether to focus on unit tests for specific functions or integration? So this is an interesting question. You're going to, at least my strategy is I'm always focused on unit tests, but always thinking about integration. And I think Suiji's advice, which is for me echoes Kent Beck's advice, which is what are you nervous about? What are you anxious about? But there's this I don't know. I see it a lot where people I think get caught up in, well, if I'm doing unit tests, I'm not doing integration tests. Like, no, you should do both. So I think the idea of focusing on one versus the other, as long as you're not saying exclusively focus on unit tests. Then you want to fully test a class that should have behavior and should have constraints and should have allowable states and not allowable states. You test that, and then you want to, and I think people get confused in integration, which is why I've switched to calling it IO based and IO free. You can have classes that work together, right? So we've got our we've got a song class, and we've got the song parser and song searcher, and all these work together, but none of them are doing IO, and they're just sociable tests. And so you're going to unit test them, even though multiple classes are involved, multiple objects are involved, and it's like, is that unit or integration? And I basically say it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're testing things working together, and those are sociable tests. And so where unit versus integration comes for me is, are we dealing with the outside world? Are we dealing with API calls? Are we dealing with databases? Are we dealing with hardware, like getting the clock? That's where we would use test doubles to help us write those tests. And so in terms of determining what to focus on, if you're, especially, depends on if you're doing test first or not. If you're doing test first, then it's what behavior do I want? And then at what level am I observing that? So like these tests here, like the parse all.
Looks like Ted might have frozen there.
Well,
yep.
That was weird. Am I back?
Yeah, you are back.
Okay, that was weird. I don't see any.
Was it just me that saw that with Ted, or was it everyone?
No,
it could be my internet connection. It could be my internet connection.
It looked like StreamYard was causing some problems, or noticing some problems. Anyway, long story short, if you're doing test first, then you want to figure out what are you testing, and this is where outside in I think is useful. You start with what does the API need, or what does the UI need, and then you follow it down from there. If you're writing test after, it gets a little bit harder because you got to figure out what are you testing. Are you testing the code you just wrote? Where did you write that code? What does it use? So there's a lot of it depends at that point. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a guidance. So yeah, so let's create our result assert, and it's a class. Yeah, it's class. Let's go ahead and before we create the constructor, we want to actually do so here we want to extend the abstract assert. So which one do we want to extend?
Is it this one? Oh, that's core though.
So we want let's see. I think we want, so this is, yeah, I think we can, we don't want to, no, we want to extend abstract. Yeah, abstract assert. That's what we want.
Even though that's that's AssertJ. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And let's go ahead and implement whatever it's asking for. Right. So that's what I expected. So we want to generify abstract assert. So we want to give it. So undo that part because we're going to want to generify it and then regenerate the constructor. So abstract assert. No, on the abstract assert part, because we were basically going to say there. So there are two types that are needed here. One is
self and actual.
The self. So self is result. No, sorry. Self is result assert, and then actual is result. Yeah. And now let's implement that. Yeah. Right. So what happens here, and I think so this AssertJ, if you look at its code, it's like it pushes generics and stuff like that to the edge in order to get a fluent interface. And so what we want is we don't want the caller to this constructor to have to specify the self type, because the self type, basically there are two types. There's what are you asserting on, and what is the assertion class itself. And what happens with the Fluent API is you're constantly returning itself, because it has the knowledge of what you're asserting against. And so that's where we'll be able to say is success, and then failure messages and things like that.
So is there like a factory method or static that creates?
No, so what we'll do is basically change self type on line 8 to literally be ourselves, which is result assert.class. And then we can remove self type from the constructor, and we can make it. You can just
manually do that, or do I need
no,
to
have it do it. It's not used.
Yeah.
So Alt Enter.
Oh, great. Alt Enter.
Yep.
Sweet.
And then there's no reason for this to be protected. We can make that public. In fact, we kind of want it to be.
Yeah,
public.
I was wondering about that.
I'm not sure why it did protected. Interesting. So what this does is now when we create a result assert, we give it a result, and then we'll be able to do some methods on it. So yeah, so we can go back here. Was it here?
I thought it was.
Yes. Okay. Do
you see it? No, I don't.
So if you hit Control E.
Yeah, it was that file.
Okay, it was that. Okay. So just search for the method. I think we called it is success.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's got the same name as yeah, there we go.
There it is. So what we want to do now is extract results there on 63 into a local variable, which seems weird, but let's try it.
Stick with result 1 for now, because we're going to get rid of it anyway.
Let's see. Do we need to do this? Oh, maybe we don't need to do this. Let's not do it and see what happens. So what I want to do is on line 62.5 is let's instantiate that result assert. And we'll give it the result. And then we'll hold on to that. Yep.
Sure.
And now do we want to push it out as a parameter? I think we do. Yes. So let's push out, let's introduce parameter.
From of result assert?
Of result assert, yeah.
Like that?
Yep. Let's just check on one of the callers and see what that looks like.
Callers of a success?
Yeah, yeah.
Right up above, 656.
Oh, right there. Okay, great. Perfect. So what we're going to do now is, now this is feature envy, even though it doesn't quite look fully like it. What we're going to do is we're going to use now move method. So F6.
All right.
And where's it going to go? It's going to go to result assert.
And it's doing that because it's already got.
Yes. So what it does is it looks at the parameters. It does two things. It looks at parameters and it looks at contents of the method for references to fields. There are no fields here because this is a test, or at least this test has no fields. And the only one that's sort of reasonable to move to is result assert. And so we just get one. So we're a factor. So now what we see on 56 is new result assert, right, is success. Now, result is going to be redundant. We're going to get rid of that. But right now, our test should still pass because basically that we created the object and it was a no op.
Yeah. Where were we? Here.
Yeah. So now, now let's go to our result assert class.
Yep.
And now what we can do is replace on 16, we can replace result with actual.
Just
delete it and type actual. So actual comes from the base class, the abstract assert. So when we did on line 11, we did super result, it saved off the result and calls it actual. So now, to answer Suiji's query, no, we get rid of, I mean, could we have gotten rid of it before? No, because we need to replace it with actual. So that's why we did it in this order.
So Alt delete.
Yeah, so now we can do a safe delete.
Safe delete.
Yeah. Let's run our tests. And if we look at the callers, you just jump to the first one. So now we got new result assert, result is success. So now you can put the is success on a new line. And so that gets us, right? So now we've got a result assert and that reads much more nicely. So now we have two directions we can go. One is make assert that work for a result assert. The other is to start slurping in other assertions like the one below it.
So the assert that would get rid of the new.
Correct. And basically it would become a static method on the result assert.
I'm going to move this down here. I know it's test code, but just so we can see them both.
Sure. Hello, Jonas.
So we would, in order to do that, we need to make is success static or?
So what we, so if we want to go the assert that route, and that's fine. That's what we need to do is in the result assert class, we need to do two things. One is provide a static factory method for a new assert that method. So let's grab 50. Go ahead.
You said if we want to go this route, what is the other route?
The other route is just start slurping in failure messages and other assertions that we want to do on our result assert. But we may as well get the assert that out of the way. It's pretty easy.
Okay, cool.
So let's extract the newer result assert on the top on 56. So the whole result of that extract to a method.
Through the method or to it?
So just 56. So just the creation of the result assert.
Okay. Extract to method.
To a method, yes. And we'd like that to be a static method. But we're going to call this method assert that. And yes, we want to replace all duplicates. And because it didn't because you're not using the modal, it didn't pop up. Let's go to the implementation of that. Let's make it static.
Did you actually? I'm forgetting. Java is static before private or after?
It's after.
Okay.
And so let's now move this method over to result assert. I think you hit F6 on the wrong thing. You want to put it on the method.
Yeah, I did the right thing.
Otherwise, it tries to move the class.
Yeah. Fully qualified name. This one would be.
So this is result assert, and let it autocomplete.
Yep. Yeah. Escalate.
Let's make it public, and then refactor. So now we've got some errors because our result assert is getting confused. So there's one more thing we need to do, which is in our result assert definition. So where we define the class, we want to we moved this to the wrong class. My bad. So we'll
undo.
do this. Do you want to undo? Yeah, let's undo it because otherwise it's going to be hard to fix. Sorry, I forgot that the assertions need to be in a separate class. We're going to take the assert that, still move it, but we're going to move it to a new class.
Got it.
So
we still have the failure here. Should we?
Yeah. That'll be fixed once we finish the assert that move. So on line 64, let's move that method. And so type result assert, so to let autocomplete.
Yeah, and then we're going to change the class name.
And we're going to add to make it result assertions. So IONS. And then public, and then refactor. And yes, we want to create it there. Yep. And yep, we want to create it. And so let's go to that new class. And let's extend assertions.
The Jupyter one?
No.
The AssertJ one, right, of course. Duh.
And so now we should be back to compiling.
Green.
Yeah.
Run the test.
Yeah, run the tests.
And then delete that comment in 14. And their result assert.
Yeah, we're going to delete 14, yeah. And so now the last step is currently we're importing result is we're if we go up to our imports, there's probably the assertions being imported, or maybe so that we can remove because we're now using our new result assertion all the time. And now what we can do is we can go to one of the calls and have it import static on that. So I think you could do an option, an alt enter on that. On demand static import. Yeah.
Oh, it was there. I didn't see it.
It was a second option.
Ah. Got it.
So that'll basically do a static import like we had before, but instead of using the default AssertJ one, we're going to pull in ours. But we get all of the other ones because our assertions extends their assertions. But now it recognizes an assert that takes a result. So if you look for one of the ones we refactored. Yeah. So now there on line 57, we see assert that result is success. And that's what we want. Can you hit escape to unhighlight? Thank you. And so
indent is driving me crazy.
Yeah, so just do a reformat.
Yeah. Control Alt L. I'm right. Yes, good.
Yep. So now we have assert that result, and for anything that does is success, that works fine.
So then the next thing is to pull in failure message as part of the is success.
Yes, or we can pull in is failure because we have a bunch of those. That might be a good next step.
One of these.
Yes. So how do we want to do this one?
So we want to move it. We want it to do the refactoring steps if we can to move it from move this rough logic to result assert.
So why don't you sketch in comments what it should look like in place.
Oh, in this place.
Yeah.
At the target place.
So what is the use site? What do we want it to look like?
Yeah, I'm going to steal this. Oh, interesting. It broke the. Something along these lines is what I'm thinking.
Right.
Now this one doesn't have a message, the one above, but in this case we would probably want.
Well, let's not since there's no message in what we're replacing, let's not add in
Yeah, good
what we
point.
don't need yet.
Right.
So if that's what we want it to look like, what might be a step to get ourselves in that direction?
Let's see, we could inline just one occurrence of X success to here and then extract it out, then extract the whole thing to a method and then move it to result assert. Would that work?
So give me those steps again.
So I was thinking like here for is success, inline this into that spot.
Well, you can't inline that because we're not calling that method.
Right, it's calling the other.
It's calling is success directly on song result.
Yeah. Well, before we did something along the lines of extract this to a method, and then did some intermediate steps that I forget, and then moved it over to the result assert class. Do we need to do something with assertions?
No, that's fine because that's
fine. Yeah.
that's the general. That's basically our way of making assert that compatible with our new assertion. So you can probably even
close that.
We haven't quite fully generified it, but you can just ignore it for now.
Okay.
So Suiji mentions you could inline assert that. I'm not sure where that would get us. I assume you mean this assert. So that assert that would inline a static method. We could try that, see what that looks like. Just this only, yeah. So I'm
So
not
would
sure
we make?
Yeah.
I guess if we made this a method and then promoted song result to a parameter, that would get us to this part. I'm not sure that'll work though, but
yeah, I'm not sure there's a direct way to do that because we don't have. I mean, we could. So let's undo that.
Could we just clone this and make a new one?
Yeah, I mean, so what you know me, I always like to try and figure out, is there a way to get there through automated refactorings?
Right.
The normal the process we used before, right? Extract that, assert that to a static method, introduce the variable. It's harder here because there's no field that represents the result assertion, the result assert instance. So if we extract this, make it static, there's nothing in it that allows us to move it into result assert, unless
not even result.
No, because that's part of the definition of the types. That's not in the hierarchy. If we pull in, if we do a new assert, that we don't want that because we want it to call a constructor. There might be a way, but it's probably not worth it at this point. All right, Astrid, have a good night.
Good night.
I guess it's evening, not night. So I think what we want to do is let's pretend we have the method that we want, and then we'll create it. So basically what you sketched out above. And then let's
you're going to say something?
Let's
just
pretty much yeah, actually you can delete it. So yeah, go ahead, create that.
Cannot find
where so let's create it.
Manually, you mean?
Option enter. And create the method.
Okay. Yeah, I did the wrong click. That was the issue.
Yeah. And then you can copy the 15 and 16 and just 15 and make it false.
Hold on a second. It's a Control Shift J.
No.
That's
to join. J is for join.
J is for join. Oh, right. But what is the completion? Don't tell me. I'm gonna look at my list. Oh, Control Shift Enter.
Yes.
That one I need to practice on and not do it in my notebook. There we go.
All right.
So then now we can get rid of this.
Yes, and if we run our tests, they should still pass.
The downside of this is it doesn't automatically change all the other tests.
Correct.
And that's one of the advantages of trying to find an automated refactoring.
Yeah, so it may still be worth it to to find other usages of our is false, extract those to a method, do the right thing, and then inline it all to sort of spread out the change. So let's
yeah. 1 second.
So besides saving us time, that's the advantage of the automated thing. We could look for code duplicates. I wonder if that would. I don't think it looks close enough. Yeah, so let's find another one that just checks for is false. Yeah. So what we can do is we can just extract the whole assert to a method.
The whole thing?
Yeah. And we'll just call it temp or applesauce or pants, whatever you want.
Pants, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's interesting. Is that the only usage? Is there no other is false called?
Oh, that was the wrong click. It's false.
Oh, the other ones take a message. Is that it though? Is there any other?
At least within this class.
Oh, okay. So that's it. They're just 2 usages in this class?
Yeah.
Oh, they do only 2. All right. Then let's undo that because it's not worth it. And let's just change it.
What am I doing wrong? Okay. So we're good there. Now there's the other one, but that's got the message, which we'd have to.
Yeah.
It's right here in front of us.
So let's take a look at. We can start with either one, either the success or failure, one of the ones that does the as, and then we'll push that into our result assert.
Okay, there's one.
I think that's generic enough that we should pretty much just move that. I
think I'm not grokking what you're saying.
So
maybe that was a thought, not an instruction.
It was clearly not a precise enough instruction. So let's delete 40, cut 42, and paste it on 20.5 on the bottom.
I see.
And then let's replace 41 with is failure instead of the whole mess.
Actually, we need to do this first.
And are there any other as's?
I don't know why that just was funny to me. That's under.
Yeah, that's under actual values. It's under values.
There's a success, but we're currently dealing with failure. And that's success.
So
we've zipped around.
So let's find all of the is trues and replace them with is success.
Well, if I got the case incorrect. There's 2 of them. But wait a second. Can we run the test? I feel like this is failure is going to break. Because there's more than one is failure, right? And they didn't all test for the same message.
So this message is not part of any kind of assertion. It's just what we display when that assertion fails. So that's why I was confident as a cut and paste.
Got it.
Because it's not affecting anything other than when it does fail, we'll see that message. I mean, if you want to see it, we can go and just put a bang in front of actual there on line 20. And now it should display that message all the time.
And that message is valid in all those situations.
Yeah, because basically should have succeeded.
Right.
But, you know.
Yeah.
Should not have exceeded, but it did. Yeah.
Okay, so back to the is trues.
So we want to replace we want to keep the as where it is. Because it's custom for this specific test. But we want to drop the is success. Basically, move the is success from there to replace is true.
Same here.
Yeah.
No more is truths.
All right.
There's still, that's is failure, but is there any, and there's no more is falses.
Oh, there's no more is falses. Okay, yeah, that's right. We covered them all. All right, I think it's long past time we commit.
Goodness gracious, you're right. Is that good enough, or do you want more or different?
Nope, perfect.
Great. Shipping it.
All right. There was a question that Xproof asked before. Hey, Xproof. Oh. Have I ever had to version my APIs due to breaking changes in my code? I don't like versioning APIs. Sometimes you have to, but I prefer making sure that the APIs. So my APIs, I haven't had to do that. I basically add new fields, and then because versioning is pretty tricky. But sometimes you have to do that as a last resort. I'll version them, but you only need to version things if you remove stuff. So APIs can grow. You can add fields, and doesn't break any backward compatibility if you're providing more information to someone. If it does, that's their fault. They shouldn't blow up because there's more information than they expected. But sometimes if you're, I feel like it's often not versioning that you want to do. You basically, if it's breaking changes, that means you're changing behavior, and maybe you want just a different endpoint. So I prefer, I guess, in a sense, a semantic, truly semantic, in that I'm using a different term for the API, perhaps even a different, basically a different resource for what you want to do. If it's really a breaking change, because that means it's different. It's not just different data; it's different behavior. But overall, it's again one of those. It depends on the concrete specifics that you're dealing with. All right. I think there's a little bit of cleanup we need to do for our assert before we add before we move the other methods. One is right now on 7, we need to generify our result. So I think that just needs to be question mark. Because we don't know, I don't think we care what it is. Result assert might itself need to be generified by that term, but we haven't done that yet. So I think that's okay for now. So Luigi Man says don't use raw arrays for your requests. Yeah, so I've seen places that you make a call and you get this array. right? The first thing you see is like a square bracket, and that's terrible. I'm not sure if that's what Luigi means, but I've seen that. It's like, no, everything should be name value pairs, and then you can put stuff in arrays. Okay, so now we want to work on our other assertions that we're doing against the result.
Just go top down and test they're using result.
No, I think we should just go into our test and that we were in and continue
within this one,
collapsing stuff. So so here we have on 173 that we're checking that the values contain exactly. So this is going to be interesting because there's going to be values. There's going to be value. So is success, what would we like that to look like? We'd like to say assert that song result is success. We could just say values. Do we want to say something else?
Meaning,
like what would be the ideal
like
API
this
from here? Yeah. We then just say values, and then well, values would return a collection assert, and then we would just be able to use the standard stuff.
So it'd be like this, then contains exactly.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Exactly. No pun intended. That seems reasonable.
So if we just create. Oh, interesting. Because is success.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
It's not. What does that mean? Replace with qualifier.
It might be confused because you added the contains exact. So why don't you delete that for now? Huh. That's interesting.
Is success not returning a void?
Yeah. Is success is returning a void. That's why. So let's make is success return self. In fact, in general, we should be doing that.
Yeah, I was wondering why they were returning void.
Because we didn't need them to return anything else. So these should all be result assert. Basically return this and then have it fix it. No. Autocomplete won't work because it's going to try to autocomplete it in a way that makes sense given the return value. Yes. And then do the same thing for is failure. And let's make is success public just so we don't, because it should all just be public. When we did the extract and move, we didn't tell it to make it public.
Gotcha. I didn't notice that.
All right. So now we should be able to create that method.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's going to create it with void.
Actually, let's see if it changes the way it does this. So let's copy and
were you thinking
that.
this?
Yeah. Let's
to
see if it
now
knows.
it'll. It did.
Sorta.
I was thinking returns values.
It returns kind of not quite what we want, but at least it has a. I'm not sure if that's actually helpful. So let's not do that.
Okay.
You can comment it out though, or delete it, whatever. So let's create it. What we actually wanted to return is a
Oh, right.
Collections assert. I have to see
what
where.
is. We're passing it in as a set. And we're a list of success.
Right, but what we want to be returning is an AssertJ assertion, because we're going to then want to call contains exactly. So can you click on 176 there on the top? Where does that come from? Why don't you do a Control B into it? So what are we in? We're in abstract iterable assert. That's not going to be good enough for us. We need a concrete abstract iterable assert. What's that? Oh, collection assert. Okay, great. So we can close this file. And what we want is, where we created values, we want the return type in void, instead of void, to be collection assert. And furthermore, we want it to be collection assert of, what did we say these are?
You mean over here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so here's where we have to generify. But what are we using right now? We're using song. So let's do song, and then we'll generify it later.
Got it. Okay, so back to result assert. The new void. So you're saying song here?
Yep, right. And so now what we do is we basically manufacture this collection assert, handing in the results values. So we can do return new collection assert. And then give it the actual values.
So is it actual?
Mm-hmm. Actual dot values.
Oh, dot values.
Right, because we're basically saying, here's an assertion class that you can then start doing assertions on.
Should this be song here?
Yeah, it may not be able to interpret that. Right, because we haven't generified, because it doesn't know what values contains, because we haven't generified it. So let's go fix that. Let's go to that question mark we put in our class header, in our class definition here. Let's change the question mark to song. So that'll concretize it. And so now it knows, then you don't need the one on 29. Right, because when we call actual values, because we said question mark, we were saying that we don't actually know what kind of values this holds. Yeah, that's it. Make concrete. Now we should be able to uncomment 174 on the top. And that should still pass. And if we want to see it fail, why don't we change on 174? Let's change one of the characters. There we go. Now, here's where we could start getting really fancy and make this stuff easier to read. Because right now, in a sense, we're falling back to sort of the generic contains exactly. We could get fancier and say, you know, values contains song or something like that. But I think that's probably more than we want to do at this point. All right, let's change it back, and then we can delete 175 and 176.
Okay, all right. Done.
So Sweegie had a nice suggestion to display something like that if the is success fails. And I like that. But before we do anything else, do we want to take a break?
Yeah, probably should.
Yeah. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll implement Sweegie's suggestion, and then we should be able to change all the other is success contains stuff to use our new values method, and then we'll continue with that. So I'll take, what, a 5-minute break?
Sounds good.
I will set that up. Where's my thing? There it is. So some of you may know that I have a game to help you get to know and learn about test-driven development called JitterTed's TDD game. And this is a picture of a bunch of us playing the game at the Agile Open Northwest a couple weeks ago. And people had fun. We played this several times with probably close to 20 people, and everybody had fun. Everybody learned something. Oops, that was loud. And I've been proposing this at various conferences, and it's been played by probably hundreds of folks around the world. So I encourage you to take a look at it. If you go to tdd.cards, you'll find out more about it. And if you go to TDD cards, you'll see this. There's a video. So a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago by now, on the Agile Lunch and Learn, I did a walkthrough of predictive test-driven development. So basically what we do here on stream, and then walk through the game and talk about that. So currently have not that many copies left in stock. So if you want one, I ship internationally. Go ahead and go to tdd.cards, and you can order today, and it ships out pretty quickly, assuming I still have some ones in stock. All right. So let's go ahead and for our is success, let's use Sweegie's suggestion. Now, the only problem with putting our own failure message here is that it would override any caller's description change. So for example, on the top there, 186, if that fails and we put an as in our result assert at the bottom, it would override that one. Can we do it? Can we do a check? Can we change on line 16 at the bottom, put a bang in front of it? And then let's run. No, don't run.
Oh, sorry.
I know that.
The rhythm.
Yeah. Because basically I just want to run the one test there on line 186, whatever that test is. I know it's going to fail, but I want to see what the failure message is. Okay, so we lost the fit. So that's what I was concerned about. And we need to fix that.
Does this have to be after a success?
Well, it can't be. Because the as basically says, hey, when it fails, this is the message. And there's something about the way the as works. Can we even do that? Let's see, what do the docs say? So how do we get access to let's see. Oh, so it returns a new described as. Yeah, let's jump into that as well. Let's just keep jumping until we get to a concrete thing. Yeah.
Keep jumping, or this is the
well, we're now in descriptable, so we're now in an interface. So
back one.
No, I don't think this is going to help us. I think we need to look at some concrete assertions. So as calls described as, which does that.
Wonder if it's the condition implementation of it.
I wonder if we're actually no, actually that's fine. No, let's close all these. I'm gonna have to this is a part that's sort of a bit underdocumented in terms of
undocumented versus how to use it or how it's implemented?
Well, undocumented in terms of how to handle the specific situation. So let's look through at some examples. So let's look at custom assert examples. Let's look at it like employee assert. That doesn't do anything. So these are
You do assert. Look, assert.
Yeah, so
as
yeah, so we've been delegating. So what happens is we have been delegating in a sense to the default Boolean assert. But at that point, the one that sort of captured the description message is our class. But then when we delegate it to this other one, it uses its own, and so it's lost. It's lost that. So I think we need to be a little bit more manual in terms of basically doing this kind of work. So where we actually generate the message ourselves, instead of relying on the Boolean assert, and then have a specific fail message where we can where basically we do the check instead of delegating to somebody else's assert, we write, in a sense, write it from scratch. So I think this is the way we should go.
Okay.
Because this will give us more control over the message, and then I think we can capture. Then I think we can use the message if it's defined. If not, we can replace it with one of our own. All right, so let's switch back to you.
My screen. Okay.
So let's modify our. First of all, let's fix our. Let's undo our change on line 16 at the bottom.
My mouse just got weird. There we go. Nope.
So what we want to do is, instead of sort of delegating to assert that, we're going to write this manually. So on 15.5, we're basically going to say is not null. We're going to call a method.
Is not null.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what that does is it ensures that actual is not null. So if somehow actual, no, you don't need to do anything else. It just does it all for us.
Okay.
Then what we want to do is instead of 18 and 19, so let's delete 18 and 19.
Okay. Is there value in commenting them out? Will we need some of those, or no?
No.
Okay.
So what we want to say is if not actual dot is success.
When you say not actual, you mean bang actual?
That, yes.
Okay.
So basically, if it's not success, then what we're going to do is we're going to say fail with message. So the first parameter, I believe, is a message. Can you have it? Can you display the parameters? Yeah. So basically, it's an error message, and then the arguments for that message.
For that message.
But let's instead let's do something simpler.
Okay.
Let's just where can we get booleans? So can we go up to the superclass for a minute of what we're in?
This one?
Yeah. Because I'm trying to figure out where the as is stored. No, don't search for anything. So I think info is what we want. Can you scroll down a bit? Yeah. So what we get is we get info, and I think that will be populated appropriately. Let's try that. Because basically that's what the Boolean assert does. So let's sort of emulate that. So instead of so let's take a step back. So delete 17 through 19. And we're going to leverage the Boolean asserts that are already there. So let's on a new line, let's say new sorry, booleans.instance, so uppercase B, plural. Nope, not that one. The second one. Nope. Yep.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah. Dot instance. And then dot assert equal. And then actual, sorry, first info and then actual dot is success. And then true. Let's and let's go up to the test on the top. I'd like to see this fail. Can we go to one that calls is failure?
Oops, wrong place. Oh, that'll work too.
And let's call is success. And let's just run this test. So we're looking for is to see what does it do when it fails. Okay, so that's the default the default message. Let's put an as up above line 22, so 22 and a half. Say as this shouldn't fail, or just some message, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now we've preserved the as message if there is one. So let's undo both those changes. And let's run all the tests just to make sure we're back at a good state. You want to do a
all.
Yeah.
Or all are IO free.
IO free. Cool. All right. So let's go back to our our is success message at the bottom. So so here what we're doing is we're basically saying use this info, which is the the error message, or the description, the default description, if there is one. If we want if we want to display our own message, then I think we'd have to look at if info is there or not. But I feel like I don't want to do that right now. I want to fix up is failure to emulate what we've got here. There's the other thing we want to do is sort of the idiom, and I'm blanking on why they want to do this. But instead of returning this, we return myself on line 19.
Really? Just the
Yes.
word myself?
Yes, because it is an inherited variable. And I think it's because it has the right type decorations on it.
Okay.
And let's put some empty lines between so 17.5 and above 19. Just to separate out the sections.
Oh, I see. Oh, wait a second. You mean like this?
Yes.
Got it.
All right, and then let's make a similar change to the is failure on 24. Can you hit escape to turn off the search?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So similar would be now this would be, oh, right, comma false.
Correct.
And then the only thing that's weird is we
yeah. So let's comment out that assert that block. Let's return myself and then make sure everything still passes. All right, great.
So in this case, we wanted to have an as within our custom result assert.
Correct.
So it'd be some sort of assignment to info beforehand.
I think we can just call I think we can just call described as
Before.
Before, yes.
Like that.
Yeah.
Now, if we run the tests,
Well, we won't see it, so we need to
we
force
won't
it to
see it.
fail.
So we got to force it to fail. So let's go for is failure. It's not the best test to force a failure on. What about this one? I guess we'd have to change.
No, just change the line 28 from false to true.
Oh, here.
Yeah, and then when we run them, we'll see at least three failed tests.
Right.
But we'll see the
message.
The message. Yeah. Okay. There's probably a way that we can check to see if there already is a description before we override it. But I think right now we're not going to worry about that.
We're not using. Should we put a little breadcrumb here for us if we're ever like, hey, how come our as is not showing?
Well, our as
on failure right now.
Yeah, that's a good question.
We've got 4 of them, 3 of them, but we haven't even gotten to the incorporate. I'm not seeing anywhere we're doing as on failure.
Yeah, let's put in a comment above the method and say currently overrides any as calls.
Like that?
Yeah, I might put a big warning in front of it. Yeah. Do you want to turn that into a block comment so it actually comes up in when we do an F1 on it?
Oh, interesting. How do you convert to? Is it manual or is there a way to say?
I don't know. You can always do Alt Enter and see what it suggests.
Oh.
Replace with Javadoc comment.
Oh, Javadoc or block?
No, Javadoc.
Ah, okay.
You don't need to say it's failure. You can just say this currently, because it's documenting as failure. Yep. So now if you do an a help, what is it, Control Q on it, it'll pop up that. Yep.
Okay. Good to know.
All right.
Does it just show Javadoc help, or is that all help? Well, I guess it is only possible implemented through Javadoc.
Yeah.
The control Q. Okay.
Yeah. So let's run all our tests, make sure we're back at everything passing, and then we'll do a commit. And I think the main thing we did here was convert or custom assert. What is it? Not restores. No longer ignores as messages.
That's true for success, but not failure.
No, we've done it now for both, right? Because they're both now using the Boolean's instance assert equal.
No, but
oh, I see what you're saying. That's true, right? So only for the is success.
Actually,
yeah, I'm gonna have to search through the.
Okay, is that good?
Yeah, that's good enough.
Okay.
So let's see. So where are we? We did the success messages. Let's do the failure messages. So where we are is actually a good place to be. So what would we like this to look like? I think we'd like it to look like is failure and then messages.
Versus failure messages.
Yeah, because I think it's clear in context that is failure messages contains exactly. I think that will be clear.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and implement that. Yep. So this is going to return also a collection assert, this time of string. And then let's return similar to above, but with the failure messages.
Oh, actual.
Right.
There we go.
Right. Yep. And then we should be able to delete line 25 on the top there. Nope.
The other line 25.
Just 25.
And get rid of
and
that
the semicolon.
25.
Yeah.
So now we want to force it to fail.
I think we can, since it's a failure message, I think we we would just change the contains exactly on 25.
Oh, I'm not sure I know what you mean.
So change the message that we're expecting on line 25.
Oh, to be something different.
Yeah.
Got it.
Right.
Because this is a failure. Right. We're not going to force it.
So that's the hard-coded message we give it.
Right.
And now it doesn't have that. So now we know it's falling into this assertion. So now we can restore it and then watch it all pass.
Cool. So now do we search out the other is failures? Oh, there isn't. Oh, no, bad.
Do we not check any other failures?
No, it's my bad type.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, interesting. So this one's got
that should just work.
Size.
But that should just work because has size is on our collection assert. So we should be able to replace everything from line 41, the semicolon, through the end of line 42. I don't know if that appears anywhere else. Yeah. No, sorry, undo. See if there are any other instances of that. No, so reselect what you had.
Okay, from here to
the end.
To there, okay.
Yeah. And now do control whatever command key to do a search. And then so there are two instances of it.
Yeah.
So turn that into a replace. So hit the whatever keystroke to do replace.
That one I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'm going to assume it's Control R. Yep.
And now just do a replace all. No, that's couldn't have been right. Oh, I see what it did. Okay, never mind. So undo that because in this case, it's not
looking at the failure.
It's not off of the failure. So there was only that one occurrence then. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so you can go back up to the previous one and just delete it. Hit escape to get off the. So I noticed that you don't use your end key to move to the end of a line.
So like, no, it didn't work. Oh, I know why it didn't work. I still had the control going. So if I go to here, then end.
So if you hold down the shift key and press end.
Shift. I had control down.
So that's much faster than trying to word your way across. And these little things, I notice a lot of folks don't use their home and end keys. And I understand on Mac why that's the case, is because the Mac makes it actually really difficult to type those if you're working on like a laptop, because you have to hold down an FN key in order and then figure out and remember which key is representative of that. But if you're using a keyboard, and I think most Windows laptops as well have an actual separate end key, um, it's one that's saves a lot of time. So we want to add in. We actually want to replace that with messages. Yep.
Now it should just work.
Yes. Excellent.
Cool. Excuse me. Oh, here's a different one.
Oh, it's probably because we're not consistent in our use of whatever variable name we're asserting on.
Yes, that's what it was.
So you can do the same thing. Replace the semicolon through the end with just messages.
Did it wrong again. Control end. Nope.
No, shift. So shift is your select key. So holding down shift means you will select however your cursor moves.
This isn't the right one.
No.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay. So shift, new line, end. Okay, that works.
And then if you hit enter, that and then dot messages. So you can just hit enter and it'll replace what you typed. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And we should pretty much be at the point where we only have one assert that in each test. So can we just scroll through our tests? Yeah, you can jump from assert that to assert that. So this one, so the one on 188, we should be able to also replace. And we could get fancy with regex, but I'm not going to bother.
Now this one's values.
Right. Now this is going to be an interesting issue that we'll want to fix. Right now, we should never have access to, well, we probably don't want to make it easy to access values if it's failure. And similarly, we don't want to make it easy to access failure messages if it's success. And I don't know that we want to do it, because what happens is, instead of returning an instance of the result assert, you return an interface where it's only, in a sense, it's a very state-like pattern. We only return things that are allowable from this point. So from is success, you're not going to return just a generic result assert. What you're going to return is a result success assert. And it would not have
values.
In fact, it wouldn't even have is success or is failure. It would just have values on it. And similarly for so sort of this idea of narrowing down the interface as your fluent thing goes. I don't know if we want to spend time on that. We can make that choice, but let's clean up all of our assert that's to make sure that we're using all our new stuff.
Yes.
So that looks good.
Huh?
That one's fine.
We're testing its success, then we're checking. Oh,
yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, that's a test against result itself. But we'll leave it. That we need to fix. Yes, typed fluent interfaces. It's some kind of fun. Yep, same there.
Another one to fix. There we go. Oh, I see what I was doing. I was hitting the delete key instead of the end key. This is dot values.
And you'll want to fix that dot success so it's on a new line.
Oh, yeah. Good catch. Another one to fix.
So I want to point out, and this is a really, really, really micro nitpicky kind of thing, in the way that I approach an edit like this. So what you're deleting is you're deleting the semicolon. That's great, and then you're deleting the entire next line. Except we know we want to call dot values, and so I'd actually leave that in place. So I'd only select up to just before the dot. Delete that.
You mean like that?
Yeah. So hit enter, not delete.
You mean after you just told me about doing end? I'm totally messing with you.
Yes.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right.
Right. And you know, and it's these kind of things that I know it seems like to some folks like who the heck cares? But it's some of these micro optimizations that, you know, part of it is just my tendency to look for any way to optimize even the tiniest thing. But I think if you do it a lot, it becomes second nature, and then it's one of those reduces, you know, how much working memory you have. But if you're not fluent at it, you're gonna spend more effort, and so sometimes falling back to what is less effort, even though it may seem like it takes a little longer.
Right.
But I think also it's important. It becomes more important because then what you can start saying is, I've done this twice. So are there other? Can I do a search and replace, or I can do a multi-caret of what we've done? So if you select just from the semicolon all the way through the result before the dot values, and then you do Alt-J, do you get any? Yeah. So do Alt-J again.
Is that one we want to do? Yes. And that's it.
And so now you can do enter, and then end, and then backspace, and then Control-Alt-L. Yeah, so backspace deleted that closing paren that's no longer needed.
I already did it.
Yeah, you did it.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant on the backspace.
No, the one you did.
Okay, yeah.
And now you can do a Control-Alt-L.
To reformat.
Yeah.
But then we want to...
But actually, now you want to escape out of your multi-caret, otherwise you're going to get really messed up.
Yeah, we just want this one to jump.
Yeah, and you'll need to do a reformat again.
Yeah.
Yes, deliberate practice, which means practice where you're practicing on a couple of micro things. So practice on shortcuts, practice on key maneuvering, with that as your focus. And those kinds of practices you don't have to spend a lot of time on, because once you start doing the deliberate practice, then you become more aware of it, and then when you're actually doing it, you're going to spend that little extra time, and if you do it enough, it will become second nature. There is a trade-off though, because if you don't do this enough, if you just don't find yourself coding a lot, you're going to spend more time trying to recall and remember these things than if you just fell back to your default way of doing it. So I only recommend this kind of optimizations of key navigation and things like that if you're coding a lot, because otherwise you are going to actually increase your working memory load for no benefit. Is that it for all our assert that's?
Yes.
Did we clean all of them up?
Yeah. Let me just double check.
That one's special.
Special.
Can you go back up one or two? There. One more. Yeah. Can we put the
right.
success
Yeah.
in the line?
Nope.
All right.
Yep,
cool.
I've got them all.
Let's do a commit. So what do we do?
We basically converted multiple assert that's to a single one.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. So we've created our result assert, although we have typed it to be result of song. We do use result in other tests.
Right.
So what are those tests?
Well, song parser test is the bottom pile, which we already covered.
Right.
The
So it's probably
song
the
service.
Yeah. So let's check that out. That might be the only other place. So these are also songs. So I think we can just fix these as well.
So this would be that to.
No, be careful. The second assert that is not asserting on result at all.
Oh.
We just want to convert that assert into assert that result is success, which will require a different import.
Got it. I haven't figured out what it looked like. Assert that song result.
Yeah.
Is success. Got it. I'm still.
No, it's just that you're pulling the dot is success out of the call,
right,
and getting rid of the is true.
What a mess.
And so now we want to change our static import.
Right. Manually do that, or do we?
Yeah, manually do that is easiest.
Just delete this one, which will then force the other one, or?
Yeah, if we delete this, then it will ask us to import, because now there'll be multiple choices. And we want hours, which is the second one. Do you want me to suggest an optimization for something?
Sure.
Okay, undo what you just did. And now do Alt-Enter again. And import static method. Now, there are a bunch of these options that you will never import. And so what I do is I basically have, if you go to the third one, and then hit the right arrow. Don't try to use the mouse because you're gonna. So
the third
from
one.
there, the third one, right arrow.
Oh, on my keyboard, right arrow.
On your keyboard, right arrow.
Got it.
Honestly, I think you should exclude org ham crest because you should never use ham crest. And then just hit enter. And then repeat that process. And what you're going to do is for each one that you're never going to use, you basically we're telling IntelliJ, don't suggest these in this pop-up. So go to the third one, hit the right arrow key. I would say the second one. Hit enter and then enter. And do it again.
Third one?
Third one. It's always going to be the third one. Because the first two we want. And it's always going to be the second one. And enter.
There's a lot of these.
And it doesn't mean that you can never import these. It just means it won't suggest them, which is because most of the time you're going to want the one or you're going to want a custom one.
This one.
Yeah, that one.
They'll get rid of. This one.
This one, is test container shading it. So you actually want the third one.
This one.
Yeah. And that one is coming from JUnit, and you should never use that.
At the root.
This one, be careful of, because you don't want to exclude the entire JUnit. I think it's probably safest to do that one. So now you only have two choices, right? And so now when you don't have two choices, for example, if you don't have a custom assert, then you won't have to do anything because it will just import it for you.
Right.
Because it will only be the one choice. But this is the one we want, that one, yeah. So I spend, I've spent over the years a lot of time adding to that long list of don't try to suggest these. And after a while, it becomes a lot nicer because then a lot of times there's only one choice, which means when you type something, it just imports it.
Is that list exportable?
It's stored somewhere, whether it's easily shared with other people is a separate question.
Is it per project or
no? That's a global.
A global, okay.
Per IntelliJ instance.
Yeah.
Which means if you go like me, go back and forth between different versions, you may end up with some things out of sync because I've never set up my settings sync properly, which I'm too lazy to do. All right. Was there any other assert that's in this that we wanted to take care of?
What about this column? That's not against song. This is against string.
Yes, and
this is ours.
Right.
This is song. This is our custom stuff.
Yeah, that's the custom stuff.
So yeah,
basically, what was the second one in song of service test? What was the second one?
This one.
Yeah. So that one we want to fix in line 83 as well. So this one, your optimization is not going to help because it's not. Yeah.
I wonder, will this? No.
What we don't want is success. We want is failure. That's why I'm saying trying to optimize this is not going to help you.
Yeah.
Yep. All righty. Let's do a commit.
Same. Basically the same commit message.
Yep.
So then the remaining one is this,
right.
which is completely different because it's using a string.
Right. So now we're going to have to think about how we're going to generify our assertion.
Meaning something along the lines of this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the right syntax, but just
it's
conceptually.
If you fix up the result assert to the left, then that will, because you need to generify that one as well.
Can I?
I don't think there's going to be an auto fix.
Gotcha.
Yes, but so if we look at our result assertions class now, so generics get erased, and so could we even do this? We could, but there's no way to tell through an assert that what the type of result is, what the generic type for result is.
Well, ouch.
There's probably a way, but I think it would require more effort than I think is worth it for the couple of asserts we've gotten in the
Should we just leave the ones that assert against string to just not use the custom assert and just leave it?
So what we would probably have to do is create a different assertions class. And then we'd import, so we'd have result song assertions and result string assertions.
Right.
And again, there might be a better way, but damned if I know.
So should we rename this one result song assertions or result song assert? Oh, wait a second. Result assertions needs to be.
Yeah, that's the one that would have to be renamed. But I think since right now we're just gonna, I think we're just gonna leave it.
Like not bother with the.
I would say just let's not bother.
Yeah, because how many tests?
Because I think we've got like 2 or 3 tests in this thing. Yeah. I think it's fine.
Yeah,
it's more yeah, I mean, we do it if for not because it's going to be terribly helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only 2 tests.
Yeah.
We're testing string.
And so the first one, I mean, that test is going to change behavior anyway very shortly. And the second one, I think, it'd be slightly nicer, but it's not that big a deal. All right. Do we want to take another break?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Okay. So when we come back from the break, actually, let's go to Jira. And I think we can call that done. And so that's the next one we want to work on. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll deal with that. So stay tuned. While we're still on break, a little commercial message. So besides my TDD game, which again is available at tdd.cards, and again, you can watch a video there for an introduction to it and see how the game is played, as well as a little bit about my process of predictive test-driven development. As you may or may not know, I am a technical coach and trainer. And so if you or your teams need some help in getting to be able to do TDD, or just want to be able to write tests better and write code better and refactor to both of those, go ahead and contact me. And even just want to set up a chat to see how I might be of service to you or your team. So I coach both individual developers, and I have a lower rate for that. If you're paying on your own, because sometimes companies don't reimburse for that kind of personal attention. So I have a low rate for individual developers if you're paying on your own. If your company's paying, I still coach individual developers or pairs of developers. And of course, will coach teams as well. I use ensembling, so either pairing. Sorry, I forget that timer is always so loud. So I do pairing coaching, and so very much what you see on stream is the kind of stuff I do for individuals and for teams as well. We do it as an ensemble, so we're all seeing and all working with code examples and katas, as well as working on your actual code to help you get your code into better shape. And so sometimes you need that kind of help. So again, you can go ahead and contact me. One way is via the Discord. So if you're not already on the Discord, you can go to ted.dev/Discord. There's also an about page, so ted.dev about, and you can contact me through there. And even if you're not sure if it's a good fit, or you're not sure what help you need, happy to set up a short chat and talk with you about that. Looking for the right button. There it is.
Aren't we all?
Okay. I always forget, like I don't usually use that timer. I use that timer when I run my training, and I need that noise, but I always forget how loud it is. All right. So we finished a Jira ticket. We now want to move on to this one. And I think we actually had that test. Yes. So why don't you hit escape so we can hide the search stuff. So we want to change behavior. Right now, when a column doesn't exist, we don't want it to return an empty string, because that would really be just invalid data. So what do we want?
So this is for a required column, or for, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns there.
I think this is completely separate from required or not. This is basically asking, for some reason we're asking, well, that's a good question. So what does it mean to say that this would be a failure?
Right. So here we go. 1, 2.
Like what would it mean to ask? Like the question I have for this situation always is does this test make sense? And by make sense is I mean, is this behavior something that would actually happen? Like, would we ask to extract a column of that name? And I think the answer is no.
No. Yeah.
So,
well, of that name, yes.
So if we ever ask for a column and that column doesn't exist. So what are this? Can we go back to Jira for a second? Because I think it said something that I. Yeah. So what is the behavior we want?
So I guess will we? So if we're importing data and the spreadsheet that it's coming from says there's a column there, then that column exists. So we're going to extract through all of them. Actually, how are we using extract column?
We're generally extracting specific columns.
Specific columns, right. So, and we're extracting specific columns because these are the ones we're expecting.
So let's be more precise. We're not just expecting those columns; those are the required columns.
Right. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thinking out loud is like, okay, so there's required columns and then there's allowed columns. We haven't really gone down the path of allowed yet.
Right. We haven't done anything with those non-required or optional columns, optional but allowed columns. So is this test really about a missing required column?
Well, I can't speak to the original intent, but as
well,
far as
I mean, the original intent was we're returning an empty if the column doesn't exist, but that doesn't have meaning from a functional standpoint anymore, or it might have changed. So what? I guess it's more what would we change this into? Is this the beginnings of our required column?
Yeah. Do we have any required tests at all?
I don't think so, because that's a feature I think we haven't even implemented. Can we go to Jira and see?
Yeah. Well, we've got some tests with the word.
Oh, maybe required. We do. Maybe we're looking though. Yeah, let's see. Do you want to increase the bottom splitter?
Oh, sure. Or just going to go.
Or just go to it.
Yeah. Would you prefer I do the splitter?
Well, while we're here, let's take a look. So, so that's the successful one. What do we have a failure for required? We do have a disabled test. Maybe that can tell us something. Yeah. So we basically don't have a test that says if you're missing required columns, we fail, because that's what this test is meant to do, which technically doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Because just looking at the implementation at the bottom, we can just look and see. I don't think there's anything about required in there.
Right. It's just saying does not match.
Yeah. And we're basically always returning a success, even if the column isn't there.
Right. So all of these required tests are success. Return success for row with required columns. But we're not actually checking required. We're currently checking existence.
We are basically, we have no failure tests, and that's why we had the disabled one.
Yeah.
So I think so this is the do we start inside out or do we start outside in?
So these two are actually
yeah, they're definitely related.
Yeah.
Or part of the same thing. So
Where was that? Here. Yeah.
So do we start from here or do we start from the column mapper test? Because certainly this test is no longer the behavior that we want.
Yeah. Well, it is closer in, so that's
right. So do we do inside out or outside in? I think for a change of behavior of this type, we can try changing it from here. See if that breaks anything.
yeah, because it will break some of the outside.
It might.
A larger test. It might break some of the outside in tests.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that are succeeding. That maybe, perhaps.
Well, we can do it. We can do a test. We can do an experiment. That's what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
We can just change the behavior at the code at the bottom and see what happens. So instead of always returning success, we can return failure if it's not found.
If what's not found, I'm kind of.
If
you mean on the else?
No. So push 28 above into the if block.
It's all. Nope. Did I just? Yeah, that was weird. Okay.
And
like
then
that?
Yeah, and then return a result failure. And this doesn't matter. We can just do an empty list, or just lowercase e. So this is basically now saying, if it ain't there, we're going to return a failure. So this is our experiment to see what tests might fail.
Yeah, few.
So 2 tests fail. Because the column mapper, that's the behavior that we want to fail. So that one's actually okay. So what's happening with that one? So what's the test testing for?
Well, let me go to it. $51. Oh, that's never mind.
Yeah. So what's that 51 in the parser? What is it doing? Yeah. So it's assuming all of these are successful.
Oh, right. We just do artist success.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah. But that's not terrible. I think that's okay. And I assume that one.
It's actually nested. So there's 3 tests that failed.
So those are all, so it's all about the sort of the required columns stuff. Let's take a look at that one.
This one?
So let's see. Yeah, so let's go back to the implementation in our song parser. So right now, in a sense, what we're saying is all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are all required columns. Is that correct? I forget what our definition of required columns was.
Yeah, me neither. Did we make a note of it?
Yes, right there. 81.
Theme, artist, song title.
Okay.
That's
So
3.
right. So release title and release type. Right now, our code requires them.
Right.
So I think we need to fix that first, and then we can fix the column mapper.
Meaning this.
Meaning 45 and 46, we can't assume that the return value is success.
Right.
Failure is okay in the sense that if it's a failure, it means
Empty.
we just skip it. Yeah.
We don't. We still create the song, but we
Right.
populate it with empty.
Right.
Now extract column. Now in our tests, the reason that went to fail is because
now we're returning a failure if we don't find it. So we're not
right.
finding release title because it's not a required column. So we need to fix that first. So let's undo our experiment.
Never mind. I should have just done this.
Yeah.
Here we go.
So we should be back at passing.
Green. Yeah. Let's see. Yep.
So we need to write a test
At song parser level.
At the song parser level.
This should be in the bottom, actually.
We need to write a failing test to have us change the behavior. Or is this really a refactoring? I think it's actually a refactoring because we have the behavior we want.
Right. We want these 3.
Right. And if it's not there, we want an empty string. So line 178 in our test on the top that is the correct behavior. That's the correct observable behavior. So if our observable behavior is correct and we want to change the implementation, it's a refactoring from this boundary point. So from parse song, we don't want the behavior to change.
But we want.
But we do want extract column to change. So it's a refactoring at the parse song level, but it's a behavior change at the column mapper level.
Yeah. So the idea with that is, I don't know why I did that. Column mapper. The column mapper doesn't have the concept of required.
No, it does not.
And so what we're saying is that it needs to understand that, or does parse song need to understand it and column mapper doesn't?
That's an excellent question. Whose responsibility is it to enforce required or allow optional?
It seems like parser and not the column mapper, because the column mapper doesn't. Well, let's see. What does it do? Header columns not match. Then it does. It contains.
Can we scroll up in column mapper?
Yeah, you bet. How far up?
Just so we can see the rest of the code. So all it is it's a domain-free mapper. It has no concept of required, not required. It doesn't care what columns are. This could work in a song theme or in some other application. So this is a generic kind of thing. So do we push sort of knowledge about required versus not required into this? And so what would that mean is if we column mapper would return an empty string for an optional column and would return a failure for required column. That's what we're saying. I think that's much easier than trying to push that into the song parser. Because here we'd have to say for release title and release type, if those are failure results, map that to an empty string.
Right. Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
Which wouldn't be unreasonable, but it feels like I mean, I don't have a strong feeling, but it feels like I think it's okay for column mapper to have this idea of required columns. Because that would mean that song parser basically doesn't change.
Right. It would come back, right. And it's already, because it would make this method, well, I don't know if that's a complete justification. It would make this method, this being parse song, more complicated because it's doing all this checking.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a map of some sort from a functional thing, but it would make it would increase the complexity of this. So so then I think it is then only a behavior change right now, only a behavior change in the column mapper. So we want to add the idea, the behavior around required columns versus optional columns.
And we only have 2 tests here, so that's easy to.
Yeah. And the first test is going to be changing. So I think we can change this first test to say empty string returned when optional column doesn't exist. And let's drop release title from our columns and be the one and have that be the one we search for.
You mean like this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I forgot what I put in my buffer.
Yep.
Okay. So now,
and now column mapper needs to not have release title as well. Because what column mapper is doing is we're specifying.
This is the header.
So how do we want to do that? Is that right?
Well, no, this is saying this is what's being passed in.
So I'm actually now confused by the parameter to the constructor.
Right. Is it the header?
It is the header. It's the header of what we got.
Right. So it doesn't declare what's required and what's not.
13 is our data, and it's confusing because we use the generic word release type, which I think is confusing in this test. So let's fix that. Let's use a real world value for release type on 13.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Got it. And actually, I forget what that is. Let me check the spreadsheet. Okay, got it.
Yep. And what would be, and so extract column release title, that's actually the column name that we're asking for. So there should be a space in there on line 14. Right. So now what we're saying is
quick one.
Yeah.
I just gonna write this down before I forget. This is gonna make it complicated. If release type is, what are the different possibilities? It's gonna make this ugly. Yeah. For now, is compilation, then release title becomes required.
Fun.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes you uncover new requirements while you are busy working on.
And I think that pushes it even further, that column mapper is the one that needs to handle that level of complexity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Mighty Core asks, wouldn't it be valuable to have a separate method that expects to always return a string? I'm not quite sure what that means.
I think
for extract column.
That's what I'm guessing what they're talking about.
So if you go to the song parser, so what we want here is we want song parser to just ask for these things. So for artist and song title, those are required. We should get a failure if it doesn't have those columns. Similarly for themes as well. For release title and release type, again, we want to defer any requirements of should this be required or not to the column mapper, to basically our configuration of the column mapper. Because having parse song call two different methods, if we decide that we want release title, I mean, even so the situation just came up, I don't know how we would do that here. I mean, I know how we do that here. It would make this much more complicated, right? Because it would basically say, if release title equals this, then call this other method. If we push all this into the column mapper, then that complexity is hidden from here, and I think it's at the right place. Yeah. So, all right. So our test our test does not look right because our header has an extra thing. Is there a release? Is compilation a release title or a release type?
Type.
Okay.
1, 2.
Is there another release type that does not require the title?
Yes.
Can we use that one?
Let me see if there is. I spoke too soon. There's one that I'm not even sure I would use, is the concept. No, they all require a title. So the 3 values here, I'll just show you. The 3 current values are blank. And then soundtrack. Well, if it's a soundtrack, I need to know the title.
Okay.
If it's a compilation, I need to know the title.
Okay.
If it's a collection, yeah, you need a title. So, because I can't think of a reason where you would not need a title for those 2.
Are there other optional columns then that we have? So
release title is optional unless release
so
type.
can you have a release title with an empty release type?
Definitely.
Okay. So let's have our data reflect that reality.
So let's switch it so that it's
So let's remove release type from the header.
Right.
And then instead of compilation, it should be a release title.
Yeah, I mean, probably should make the data consistent all the way across. So
yeah, I mean, as long as the fields make sense, I'll leave it to you.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Greatest hit. Oops. No, don't type there. Over here. I'll just say greatest hits.
All right.
That's a title. That
And so
probably exists.
And so now what we're going to look for on the next line instead of release title will be release type. Let's extract release type, that string, into a variable, into an explaining variable. And let's call this optional column name. You've got an initial uppercase letter.
Oh, oops.
So what we expect here then is this test should still pass. Yeah.
And it does. So I presume now we want to test of a failure mode.
Now we want to test if it's missing a required column.
Right.
What does the next test currently do? Okay, so that's mismatched column data. So that's clearly wrong. Yeah. So now we want, empty string return when optional column doesn't exist. That's cool. And now we want to test for failure when required column doesn't exist.
Rename this one to does not.
Yes, I was going to suggest that. And so, yeah. Oh.
Really?
I mean, you could probably just copy 11.
Yeah, I was just wondering why .var is not working.
Because var, there's no variable there. That's the name of a class.
Oh, I meant new. I was doing it backwards. Yeah. But you're right. I'll just copy and. So I guess.
Yeah, that'll be similar.
So I removed song title.
Right.
That's good. I don't know why I have it array literal form.
That was just a reminder to you of what that was without what the curly braces was.
Oh, okay.
So now we want a required
Right.
column name.
That's the one we got rid of, right? We got rid of
Song title.
song title.
So here, yeah. So remember that we don't have our
for string.
Our convenient, for result of string, which is unfortunate, but we can fix that. No, we don't want to check the values.
Right, we want to check is success is false.
Right.
It's so funny. It's still like, it's awkward even when writing this simple test. Is success is, it really is a cognitive friction.
We may want to, if we're going to write many more of these, we may want to rethink writing a separate assertion for that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So now this should fail because we're
always returning success. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll run it anyway.
So we expect true to be false.
Yep.
Yes.
Up is down, black is white.
Can we put an as message in here?
Yes. Do we want to specify which column in the as?
No, what we want to say, remember, this is the message that gets displayed when the test fails. I don't think this is a good enough message because this is not enough context. So what would we want to, let's run the test and see what we see and see if that's enough for us.
Got it.
So does that message tell us why false and true are different?
So
what I would do is I would say expected success to be false because.
Like that?
Yeah.
Let me run it again, take a look at it.
Right. So what I want to see from failure messages is, okay, we got true, we expected false. Why are we expecting false?
Right.
And so now this gives us enough context that just that message can help us interpret the assertion failure message.
Right. That makes sense.
All right, so let's go make it pass.
So the simplest thing is header columns contains column name. We're passing in
I don't think we could ever make this pass and keep the other test passing. The column mapper doesn't have enough information to evaluate.
Oh, it doesn't know which one.
It doesn't know what's required. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what we need to do then is a prepare refactoring.
Right. Would we pass it into the constructor of column mapper ultimately, or is it just a list that is a static private field of column mapper that holds what the required columns on?
I think it probably makes sense to start with hard coding it in the constructor, because then we could push it out. Although right now we'd never really need to configure it except maybe for tests.
Right.
but the simpler thing is to fully encapsulate it in the constructor.
So for pair refactoring, what can we do from that perspective?
Well, we could add this field and check it. First, we want to get back to green.
So get back to green by the simplest thing that'll get it to pass, even though
No,
you said it'll break other tests.
Yeah, so we want to get it to green by disabling it.
Disabling it, okay.
Because we're basically doing a prepare that will prepare us to get this test to pass.
Yep, of course. Yeah, so you get your go back to green so we can do prepare refactoring.
Right.
And then we can re-enable this.
Right. So what you thinking?
Trying to figure out what to do from a prepare refactoring.
Okay.
It's not jumping out at me at the moment. So
what behavior do we want to preserve?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So extract out the behavior we're going to change.
So
or
what in our column mapper tests, what does our first test say? Because that's the behavior we want to preserve. So it's saying an optional column returns an empty string.
Right. We have no idea what an optional column is.
Well, so an optional column is a column that is not required.
Right. No, I mean, sorry. Yeah. When I said that, I meant the column mapper doesn't know.
Right, but we're going to hard code that. So let's hard code that. Let's add a field.
A field. Okay.
Yeah, we can add fields.
Just manually.
Yeah.
And would it just be a string with the column name? Or
no, I would say it's a set of a set of string of required columns.
And then just do an array literal for this?
Well, this is a set, so you can't use an array literal. And we probably want to assign it in the constructor. So initializing constructor. We probably want to initialize this first. And so it's going to be set of and then our required columns.
So themes is going to be interesting.
Yep. But certainly at least theme 1 is required.
Yes, good point.
But as a string.
So particular.
Some parsers don't care.
Yeah.
Some languages actually don't care, but this one apparently does.
Yeah.
Are those the three? Are those the 3 required columns? Putting aside the fact that there could be more than one theme.
Theme, artist, song title.
All right. Yep. So now that we have that, that's clearly a safe refactoring because we've just added a field that nobody's using.
Right.
So now, what backward compatible change can we make in our implementation that will make it easy to make the next change.
So the next change is to make sure that every column name that comes in is one of those three.
So I would look at it from the point of view of what change could we make to the code that would help us with that, but make the first test continue to pass.
The first test is getting.
So you don't have the first test in view, just so you know.
Oh, thank you. I say the first test is missing required column. This one does not. It has artist, song title, theme 1. And an optional column.
So how do we use our required columns in our extract column, but that still makes this test pass?
And it comes back empty.
So it's going to be
I'm getting tired.
Yeah. So we only care about this when we don't find the column, because if we find it, who cares? We just return the value. So we want to add an else to line 30, right? Right? So else if. Yeah, else if.
What did that do? I see.
That has a whole branch. So now we can look at if it's an optional column, then we can just return success with an empty string. So we don't have optional columns. We have the opposite. We have required columns.
Right.
Because we can never know what the optional columns are.
I'm just going to sketch out the.
Okay.
Where is column defined? Is that a.
Well, we don't care about the actual column.
Right. This would be this. Oh. That, right?
Right.
But we don't have a way to check for it, so it would have to be not optional column. In other words, required.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah. So we need to use the variable we defined.
Right.
Which is required columns. And then dot contains. And then our column name.
So this will not break the existing test.
It should not.
Should not. I'm still not entirely comfortable with it. Let me think.
Yep.
Yeah, it does. Okay.
So we didn't change any behavior. We didn't change observable behavior.
Right.
And now we can do a bit of cleanup. We don't need to set the column string to empty on line 26 because we're no longer going to return that. So we can push line 33
into here.
Into there.
Can we manually do that? I mean, sorry, not
well,
manually.
we can't do it yet because if we do that, since we're not handling but that's what we're going to do. So we can't quite do it yet because we need to return a failure as a result. But now we're backwards compatible. What kind of refactoring might we do though further to make the code we just wrote easier to read?
Reverse this.
Well, we can't reverse it. right? Because this else clause is dependent on us not finding the column.
Right.
So we can't like invert the if. So what else do we do with Boolean expressions that are hard to read?
Encapsulate in a method?
Yeah.
That's okay.
And so what would you like it to read? What did you have before when you were sketching?
Oh, I forget what I wrote, but does not.
No,
No.
it is optional.
Oh.
Right? If this column is optional, we return empty string. Yep. So now that we have that, we could stop here, or we could re-enable the test and try to make that work.
Let's do that. We'll see how fried I am.
So we still expect this to fail, and we expect it to fail for the same reason, because it still doesn't return a success failure, result failure. So when do we want to return a result failure?
Ideally, right away.
Well, let's do the simplest thing. We could do it right away. Sure. What would that look like?
It's a guard clause, right? It would be something like if
can we? Go ahead and finish and type what you're going to type.
I was going to do something like oh. Yeah, I'm not sure what I was going to type actually, because
yeah, I think you were going to try to do a guard clause, but there is no guard clause here, right? The
right,
column
because
name is a column name. We
right.
don't know if it's important until we don't find the column data.
Well, what I was going to do was basically replicate optional, but actually optional is legit, and that's not so.
Yeah, optional and required, we don't know yet if it's okay. We don't
Right.
know until we hit line 30, basically 32. So can we make one change that gets the current failing test to pass,
Knowing it'll break others?
knowing it'll break others?
Oh. So then you can make this failure.
Yeah, so let's comment out that line and say return result failure. And we'd want to say something like required column not found or something, just as a temporary message. We're not asserting on any message, so we can just
right, because that's an as, not an
that's an
assert.
as, not
right. Yeah. Required column not found, is that what you said?
we can actually just make it an empty message because there's we're not asserting against it.
Okay, so now if we run this, we're expecting 23 to pass, but everything else, a bunch of other stuff to break.
Right. So it did.
Yep. Got the little green there.
Yep. So clearly that's not good enough in the right direction. And so how can we, and so this is the typical, well, I can't make it work by always returning failure in this case, and I can't make it work by returning success. So we need to do some logic
Boolean.
evaluation.
Yeah.
So what do we know at this point that can help us?
this point we know, well, no, this is a return, so we didn't get there because of that. So we know that it either contains the column name or.
Well, when do we want to return success? So clearly 31 return success if it's an optional column, we didn't find it. When else do we want to return success?
If it's a required column and we found it.
Well, who cares about if it's required or not if we found it? We're not returning it now if we found it. So let's return it if we found it. Which block tells us that we found it? Yeah, so let's return it inside that block.
Oh, in the block. Oh.
So basically move 34 to where you currently are. Right? So if we find it, we return it. If it's optional, because we didn't find it, then we return an empty string. If neither of those cases is true, then we return failure. Voila.
Voila. Et voila. Any kind of refactoring to make this easier to read?
Well, one thing we can do is now column, we don't need to have the scope outside the block.
Right. No, it doesn't let you pull it in, huh?
Did you Alt Enter?
I thought I did.
You could just push it
inline?
Push it in and then join. No, you don't want it inline. I mean, you could, but I don't think we want to. I would just push 26 down a couple of steps. And then join.
Alt J? No, that's multiple selection. Control Shift J.
Yep.
And then should we just inline column, or is that a little bit too hard to read?
I wouldn't inline column.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's probably further refactoring we could do, but we now have all our tests passing with our new requirement that it's okay to not have optional, but it's not okay to not have required. Now, there's probably some other stuff we could do further up the chain, but I think we can go to Jira and see where we're at. So we pretty much have fixed that one, 75. This one we did we approached this from a different direction. We're still currently not, like, essentially we are requiring that header rows have specific columns. We're just doing it in a way that may not be obvious from the song parser, and we're actually not checking it at the song parser.
Right. So here we're either getting success or an empty string.
So the one we're not checking is song title. So if song title is missing, that should be a failure.
Oh, here we're not testing for it.
Yeah.
Should we do an and there?
Well, I think there's more to do, and I don't think we should do it now.
Yeah.
But I think we should update Jira to say that we don't currently handle a missing song title. at the song parser level. Yep.
Is that an
I think that's part of that, yeah.
Yeah, like that.
There is also yeah, there might be some so right now we're relying on column mapper to return a failure. But we know at TSV song parser, even before we call the column mapper, do we have the right column headers? Right. So if you scroll up in the song parser, basically what right at when we create the column mapper, right there we know, and whether that's the column mapper, the column mapper knows which ones are required. And if you try to create, and so the question is, if you try to create a column mapper with a header,
should the constructor throw an
that doesn't
exception?
have the required columns, should you bother, I don't tend to like constructors throwing an exception. So there's some interesting stuff about whose responsibility is what. Do we bother?
Would you, if you were, oh, sorry, keep going.
Do we bother at all checking in the constructor, or just assume that we'll check it later?
Or would we create a factory that does the checking and it's not checking in the constructor? So we're not throwing an exception, we're returning. I don't know. That's not so great either.
No, I don't. I would not want to throw an exception from any factory method. I think unless there's something really wrong.
Yeah, that's no different than the constructor.
Yeah, for validation, I would want a method that says contains required columns. Now, who implements that, I don't know. But I'd want somebody to tell me whether I should even bother creating a column mapper or not. Because right now we don't fail until we've started processing the rows. Whereas, which isn't that much further, right? As soon as we process the first row,
we'll find out.
We'll find out. So we may be fine with that. But that's an open question.
Yeah. Should we write that down, or?
No, I like to say if it's really something that bothers us, we'll see it again, and if it doesn't, then we won't worry about it.
Sounds good.
Because that is truly an implementation detail. From a behavioral standpoint, we get the same result, and so it'll pretty much be whatever makes it easier to read and reduces duplication and passes all our tests, et cetera, et cetera.
So should we commit what we got?
Yes, because we now fail appropriately when a
to
required column is missing. For column mapper, at least.
Fail appropriately. What was that again?
When required column is missing. In column
at the column
at the column mapper level, yeah. Hey, full now full.
Hey, full now full.
All right. I think that's all, folks.
Yeah. Hi, bye, full now full.
So, do you want to do a push?
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Control Shift K.
Oh, Control Shift K.
Yeah, so Control K does a commit, and if you don't do a push from there, Control Shift K will show you all your unpushed commits, and then we'll push them all.
I'm gonna write that one down. Let's shift.
All right, that's all, folks. I don't think we're streaming again this week, but hopefully next week we'll do some more work on this.
Yeah, I can't remember if we talked about whether the weekend was a possibility or not. Whoops.
We'll play that by ear.
Yeah.
But certainly within the next week, we will continue with another episode, working on our song themes. We'll basically finish up the required column stuff. And then maybe persistence. See, I told you we wouldn't get a persistence today.
Right. Yeah, I know. I'm eternally optimistic.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But I think this is the last validation stuff that we need to deal with. And I do believe next time we will at least start on persistence. We will certainly not finish it, but we will at least start on persistence. So stay tuned for that. As always, Discord is the place to find us and chat about stuff. So join the Discord and feel free to ask questions about any of the stuff that we've done. I still have some of my TDD games in stock, so get them before I run out. Go to tdd.cards and you'll see a video. And otherwise, that's all, folks. And we'll see you next time.